Welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast. This, of course, is a transfer special. We are in the last hour of the summer transfer window. I've got three at the moment, but there will be five special guests to talk about Tottenham's business in the transfer window, both incomings and outgoings. I'm absolutely delighted to have Josh Hughes back with us, of course, from the Daily Mail. Josh, how are you? How's your day been?
It's been hectic, as you can imagine. I suppose, we were talking just before going live about, just how emotional it is for all of us. And working in that environment, it's tiring enough as it is, but to be so emotionally invested in this, especially with kind of all of the expectations we had at the start of the window, how it's kind of gone today, irrespective of Brennan Johnson, which, fully expect to be done in time. I don't think a deal sheet's going to be needed for that one. I'm expecting an announcement certainly in the next hour. It's been crazy. I'm kind of almost glad it's coming to an end, but at the same time, probably not the way we all hoped.
We've also got channel regular Matt Jones back with us. Matt, how are you?
Evening, Chris. Evening, all. Yeah, not too bad. Obviously, we'll get into the transfer window in a minute. But yeah, all good. And we'll get into the transfer window shortly.
Delighted to have Richard Whitehead, MBE, back with us. Of course, I always say the man that brings the trophies to this show, the man that brings the trophies to Tottenham Hotspur. Rich, how are you?
And the colour. I tell you what, in Nottingham, it's like a car park out here. And I think they're all going to the City Ground to sign for the Forest. I need to redirect some to, obviously, the real club. The one and only Spurs. But, yeah, I'm good, thank you. Yeah, training hard, ready for racing this year. Start racing very soon. But I think, like all of us, quite frustrated. Knowing that, obviously, we had a really good chance of making a statement and not kind of, really giving the manager the tools that he needs, but also kind of not overachieving as a squad, but actually achieving with the tools that we've got as a squad. And unless we have a miracle in the next hour, I think we might all be still quite disappointed.
You can tell all of the guests just cannot wait to talk about transfers. We've also got Josh Cowlin back with us. Josh, how are you?
I'm good, mate. Yeah, it's good to be back on. Hopefully something will happen in the next hour. I'm looking forward to analysing the window and not just chucking out some big statements. Let's go into some serious detail.
Right, Josh Hughes, let's start with you. Of course, at the moment, we have got 8 players in, and that is including Dejan Kulusevski and Pedro Porro. Of course, Spurs have signed James Maddison, Mickey van der Ven, Vicario, Viles, Phillips, Solomon, and Johnson is on the verge of being done. He's just completed his medical as per Sky Sports. We've had 9 players go out the door. 7 have gone out on loan. Of course, Harry Kane, Harry Winks. And then the loan deals, Jed Spence, Sergio Reguilon, Roden, Tanganga, Parrott, Scarlett, and Devine. What have you made of the window so far?
Well, of course, there's been a lot of change, which you would fully expect with a complete change in direction. We've gone from having a pretty stagnant, fairly old squad to now a squad with a lot more balance. There's a lot more youth, a lot more kind of potential in there. There's, we're looking at a team where we're thinking, most of the players here have reached their best or are on the other side of the hill now. Now we're looking at, certainly with the incomings, we're looking at players who are good players now, but only going to get so much better. And I think also some of the players that perhaps weren't so prominent last season, the likes of Pat Matasar, feel like a new signing. And Bissouma feels like a completely new signing because under Ange Postecoglou, we're already seeing they've had a new lease of life. The system works. James Maddison may well turn out to be one of the best signings we've made probably in the last decade. And I know that's pretty big praise this early on, but we can all see it. I think it's just right. And bar an injury, the way he settled in has been second to none. So it's been a lot of change, but we needed that. And we've been needing this for a long time. And part of the reason why there's been so much change is because for the last few years, we have not got rid of the players, particularly, and then there's several players that are still going to be at the club that should have been gone this summer. You know, and we've neglected the issue. We've kicked the can down the road year after year after year. And now we're in a position where we're going to have to kick the can down the road for even more players, the likes of Jed Spence, who, you know, I actually really was keen to sign when we first got him. I saw how brilliant he was at Forest. I watched a lot of him there. You know, I went to uni in Nottingham, so I've always kept a close eye on Forest since being there, you know, and players like that, players like Roden, just get them out the club. If they're not going to have a chance, what is the point of keeping them? Same with Troy Parrott. But also, I do accept, on the other hand, that you can't just simply get rid of every single player in one window and expect to buy, you know, get 15 out, bring 15 in. You know, clubs that operate like that, the likes of, say, Watford under the Potsos when they had their Premier League years, you know, it can go very, very badly wrong. Everton, I believe, did something similar. And, you know, now they look pretty doomed. So I understand and appreciate you can't get rid of everyone, but I just feel as if it's been quite underwhelming, despite the fact that there is this excitement and the Ange Postecoglou era has started off really well. And I'm going to, you know, skim over Fulham because I think that was solely a mistake from the manager. 9 changes, not enough respect for the competition. But I fully expect us to go to Burnley and win. I fully expect us to beat Sheffield United and go to, you know, Arsenal, having won 4 and drawn 1. But at the same time, if all 5 of us could point out the areas we still need to strengthen and the glaring misses, why haven't the club been able to see that? And I think that the fact that you've sold your talisman, the greatest player arguably ever to play for your football club, not bring in a striker. And I don't buy that Brennan Johnson's a striker. I know he can play there. I know he's a versatile forward, immensely talented boy who I think ultimately is going to need time and is nowhere near the levels that I know he will be capable of reaching. You know, it doesn't really cut it. We now are in a situation where, you know, perhaps we look at our midfield, for example, two of our 3 starting midfielders, which I think is pretty set now, that Sarr, Bissouma and Maddison trio looks like it's the kind of the core there. Bissouma and Sarr will both be off to the Africa Cup of Nations. You've got Son, who's going to be off to the Asia Cup. Suddenly, if you get injuries, and bear in mind, Christmas time when the fixtures come thick and fast, often is the time when most squads get injuries, we could be looking really, really light again. And, you know, if Richarlison gets injured, we're looking at makeshift forwards again. We're looking at playing not out-and-out strikers, but players that can kind of do a job, kind of fill in there. So it's been a good window, but it's definitely not been anywhere near what all Tottenham fans were hoping and expecting. It, you know, I say a good window, and I mean that loosely. It's a good window in the sense that, you know, I like the direction that this team is starting to go in, but certainly I think, you know, a lot of work is still needed, and we certainly need a centre back. We certainly need a striker. We probably could have done with another midfielder as well, but it, you know, we're in a position where now I feel like we're struggling to get players out the door, and yet we find ourselves a little bit short on quality and depth. So it's been a real mixed window, and my fear is, you know, have we just kicked the can down the road? So, you know, it's a, you know, out of 10, it's probably a 5. It can go up by 2, I think, if we can get a player like Tosin Adarabioyo in the last hour and the deal sheets come out. But yeah, a lot of change. We can't expect everything all at once, but at the same time, I think all of us did expect more.
Josh, that is exactly what I was going to ask. What is your rating out of 10? You've given it a 5 out of 10. Please do shout and interrupt any one of us if we're talking, if there is any breaking news that you get before I do. Hopefully. Matt, let's get your opinion on the transfer window so far, in particular the incomings, because with the incomings, do you think that this squad has improved on last year's squad?
Yeah, I mean, just generally for me, I think it's been average, the window. I think in terms of the incomings, I think they've been good. I think now we've got, and Josh has kind of touched it, we've got a strong starting 11 now. You know, Maddison is someone we've been crying out for probably for 2 years now, and he's essentially that Ericsson replacement, that lock picker that we've all needed. Brought in Van der Ven, good signing. We've now got Vicario, and I think he's now growing in confidence in goal. So I think there's been some good signings. There's obviously the potential, with Feliz, Ashley Phillips, but they're raw. They're not going to be going into that starting 11, obviously. But I think generally the incomings have been pretty good. Hopefully Brennan Johnson will come through. But I think for me, I think the real concern, and I think a lot of fans will be, is the fact that we have not addressed the core issue of what was last season, the defence. I think it was 63 goals, if memory serves me right. Obviously, last season we were leaking goals. We've brought in Van der Ven, who I think will obviously be a good player for us, and Romero. That's going to be the partnership. Suddenly, you get an injury, as Josh was just saying. You get an injury, so that's that partnership. I worry because I think we lack quality in that area and the depth that we need, and really should have brought in another centre back. So I think that's a real concern. And again, in that midfield, we've got a good trio now with Basuma. I think, as you say, Josh, he's stepped up, hasn't he? It's the Basuma of Brighton we're seeing now. He's expressing himself, which is great. And Sarr, he's coming on, and you've got Maddison. Suddenly, if you get a couple of injuries there or suspensions or whatever, I worry in the midfield. But yeah, I think the starting 11 is stronger, Chris. You can't get away from that. I think that's going in the right direction. And I get we can't address all of it in one window, right? But I think I think the strategy was quite poor, the transfer strategy. I think with Kane, I'm sure we'll come on to that. I just think the timing of Harry Kane's transfer and that saga dragged on far too long. And letting kind of him go a couple of days before the season starts should have been nipped in the bud close season, or at the very start when the players reported back from the summer. And yeah, you've got Richarlison, obviously, who's obviously struggling for form. Hopefully he's going to kick on now from getting that goal in game against Fulham. But got Son maybe. I think with Brennan Johnson, if he comes in, can Son play down the middle? But for me, it's light up top as well. I think we need a number 9. So I think just overall at the moment, I think it's been an average window, and I'd be at 5 at the moment unless anything changes with any incomings between now and the deadline passing.
Rich, let's come to you. Let's get your thoughts on the window so far. And does Brennan Johnson, does he excite you?
I thought I'd smile just because of the two boys. I haven't smiled yet. Look, yeah, like the boys have said before, I think when you kind of have a good start to a window, and your expectations as fans is that you've got quite a bit of income coming from the sale of a player such as Harry, and then also the income that's generated through the general income through last season, tickets, etc. The expectations is that you're building on the squad. Now, obviously, a new manager coming in, new philosophy. It is going to take time for us to shift those players out that should have gone seasons ago. And we all know those players. I continue to talk about those players. That it's like they're not adding any value to the team. They're not. If our aspirations to be in the top 4, and we've got players that don't fit that LCAS, players that are up to the grade, then those players need not to be at the club. And I've said that about Højbjerg, and I know Højbjerg was quite solid towards the end of the season. But for me, if we're looking at that top 4, for me, he doesn't really fit that grade. But I think because of how the transfer window's gone, with some of those players like Højbjerg, Lo Celso are going to get quite a bit more playing time, especially if we do have those scenarios when players are injured, as well as, like the boy said, obviously the international tournaments that are coming up in the season. I think we really did have an opportunity, and I might be wrong, and the chairman might have sat down with the new manager and kind of said, who are your targets? Are they all going to be achieved in this window or the next window? Are these players? Do you want these players? No, I don't think they actually will improve the squad. But these players, when their contracts run down or become available next window, which obviously we're not aware of yet. I just hope that obviously with this new philosophy that we've got in the team and the new way of playing, the new way of each player really supporting each other's positions and not leaving the team vulnerable. And it's shown in the last 3 league games that because of that, yes, the first game, I think it was a little bit of a, the game itself was a little bit kind of attack against defence, defence against attack, and we did become a little bit vulnerable. But against, obviously, especially the Man U game, really showed that, yes, we still had a lot to improve at the back, but I felt that we were playing in a way that the fans could buy into, but also with more technical support within the team, we could improve. I would say probably out of the 10, I would go 6 out of 10 with a window at the moment. I think we are definitely short up top with that number 9. Centre back is going to be how many windows do we always say that when are Spurs actually going to really invest in that centre back position? And it's we know it's not just one centre back we need. We need 2 centre backs in this window to really provide us with cover due to suspensions or injury, or really provide us with that solid base into games. We can't have Sanchez in the team. Like, come on. Does anybody think he's any good? Because I'm just like, have a good 5 minutes in 90 minutes of a game. And then it's like...
Rich, I don't want this to sound negative, but if I said to you at the end of last season, at the start of next season, Harry Kane won't be at Spurs, Brennan Johnson will be at Tottenham, and we'll still have Sanchez and Dyer, how would you have felt?
Yeah, I won't be wearing a pink hoodie. I'd be wearing a grey one. No, I think... yeah, but also when you look at the manager and how the manager wants to go, you clearly think that Johnson fits into his style of play with the pace, technical ability, and also the ability to grow as a player. Obviously, he's only 22. He's got the opportunity to be moulded into. He's an international player now with international experience, international goals, Premier League goals. What I do find is that some of the teams that have invested heavily with some of these international players, we know that's literally like flipping a coin, because some of those players that have come in from some of those softer leagues will not adapt into good or sufficient players in the Premier League because of the different style of play, and that's why I think the manager's come in. He's gone, look, what do we need? What can fit into the system now, and then after maybe the first 6 months of the first season, then really build off that. I think a massive transformation of getting rid of 15, 16 players and then trying to bring in 15 or 16 players. I think we'll be back to how we were before, where we were kind of just throwing players on the pitch, not knowing how we're going to play. I am glad that Reguilon's gone to Man United. They wanted a defensive left back, didn't they? And they bought him. He's useless. He's useless at tracking back. So I'm not sure how that's going to work. I bet you the 1st of January, the first thing that's going to happen is an Uber from Manchester to London, and he's in it.
I don't know. I reckon it'll provide them with some good performances, and I think that's a bad move from Spurs. I was very surprised that we have helped out a rival. Josh Cowlin, let's come to you. Let's get your thoughts on the window so far. And does Brennan Johnson excite you?
Sorry, can I just interrupt for 1 second?
Go for it, Josh.
Just an update. Brennan Johnson, officially a Tottenham player, contract signed, all done now. He is very excited by the Tottenham move, and he acknowledges just how important Ange Postecoglou was to this deal, how much he wanted him, and that was a key part to why he wanted to come to Tottenham. It's all done. All we're waiting for now is the official club announcement, but all the contracts are signed. He's a Tottenham player. Sorry, go for it, Josh.
Thank you for that, Josh. And can I just say as well that Hugo Lloris has just been given permission to speak to Nice by Tottenham Hotspur. So Hugo Lloris could be on the way out the door in the next 39 minutes. Josh, let's come to you now.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Chris. Well, let's go for it. I've written some things down. I think our overall window has been about 4 out of 10. That's my opinion. I think we've had some decent recruitment, but it's not good enough, in my opinion. James Maddison, though, I'm really impressed by. He's a magician. He can pick out a pass like all the other lads have said on the chat. Finally, an Ericsson replacement. He's like a dancer. I think he's one of our best signings that we've made in the past couple of seasons, if not for quite a long time. Great player. Mickey van der Ven, he's brilliant. I think he's absolutely fantastic. He's solid, he's rapid, he's tall, he's fast. He reminds me of Jan Vertonghen, another good piece of recruitment. Vicario, I thought he was a bit dodgy at first, worried me quite a lot, like a lot of fans online. But now he looks a bit more confident. He's got good hands. He looks like, if he keeps getting games, if he stays in there and does a good job, hopefully that's another piece of good recruitment. Obviously, Johnson come in today, as Josh has just said. I don't really know much about him, to be honest. I don't watch Forest that much. I didn't go to university like Josh did in Nottingham, so I'm not an expert. I'm looking forward to seeing what he can bring. £45 million, I think. Quite a lot. If you think about it, that's nearly half what we got for Kane. Is he worth that? But I don't know. The football market at the moment is absolutely mental. So maybe we've got a bargain. And another thing I was going to say is a bit like Bissouma. Bissouma, I know there's this trope of saying when you've already got a player and then he hasn't played for a while and then he comes in and he feels like a new signing. I feel like Bissouma, because he got so neglected under Conte, that he's come in and he's been absolutely fantastic under Ange. And for me, he feels like a new signing. He's brilliant and he's the anchor of our team and we really missed him against Fulham. So for me, I don't know how Conte didn't use him, as lots of fans have said. He feels like a new signing. So there we go. We've got all those players. I think that's good recruitment. I think we're going in the right direction. It's a good start. It's a good foundation. Looks like we're backing Ange. We're backing the manager and his style of attacking football, which is really important. We've actually changed direction from defensive football under like Conte and Mourinho, and we've gone to this new style. And it looks like Daniel Levy is getting behind it, which is important. On the other hand, let's look at the negatives. We have sold Harry Kane, our best player of all time, and we haven't even replaced him with the number 9, which is just shocking in my opinion. I don't understand how we haven't signed a striker because we're lacking.
And Postecoglou seems to defend that though, Josh, because he seems to want to play a certain way and he doesn't want an out-and-out striker. He wants to spread the goals around. Do you buy that?
I don't disagree with it, Chris. I think I think we definitely I don't know the word. We got in trouble sometimes because we relied off Harry Kane too much. I feel like even subconsciously the other players around him probably relied off Kane to save the day. If you put your mind back when we were in the Europa Conference League, there were quite a few situations where Kane had to come on and save and dig out our side because we were like 1-0 down against some shocking teams that I can't even name off the back of my head. I think that Harry Kane almost subconsciously did something to the side and it was too much on him. But now I feel like more players have got much more responsibility. And you can see that just all these different players scoring goals, Sarr, etc. Different players. Whereas before it was always Kane kind of thing. Whereas at other clubs, you'd have a lot more spread out goals. Do you know what I mean? Like a lot of other players would score lots of goals.
Can I come in there? I think we became predictable and everything went through Kane. I think, and like Josh was just saying there, relied on Kane, yes, but also I think teams knew that if the players around Kane were not afraid, but they obliged to give Kane the ball because of obviously his scoring rate in front of goal. But it definitely restricted some of our flair players. And I'm not saying not having Kane in the team. Not having Kane in the team is a good thing because it isn't. But I think the managers just relied on that kind of. At first, it was Sonny and Kane partnership and all the goals that they brought, but still very poor at the back. And then obviously Harry last season. I think obviously Ange coming in, he's seen that Harry's going. And he's kind of utilised the whole concept of changing the dynamic because we haven't got that vocal point up front. I think Richarlison is a real worry for me. And why I say that is because Not just that he's not scoring, but even what he's like on the ball. I think very lethargic on the ball, not positive with his whole body language. It's quite passive. I think that's something that the manager really needs to address. And if he's not getting 15, 20 goals a season, it's going to be a real kind of a stopper for the team, because you can't just have somebody like him up front that just holds the ball up or chases down things and scores 5 goals a season. That's not going to be good enough.
Josh Hughes, let's come to you. I want to get your thoughts on what you think this squad now with Brennan Johnson in it, what is it capable of? Because there are some people in the chat at the moment stating that it's been a very good window for Tottenham, and all of you are being miserable about the window so far. What do you think? I often think about how good is this squad? What will it actually achieve? Because a squad, Tottenham Hotspur as a football club, we're used to playing Champions League football. Of course, in the last few years, we've played Europa League and Europa Conference League. We want to get back into Europe, finished 8th last season. Is this squad good enough under Postecoglou? Does it have enough depth? And is it good enough, the starting 11, to finish in a European spot?
Well, I understand why some fans will say it's been a positive window, because in many ways it has been a positive window. But again, we cannot hide from the glaring misses. We needed a striker. We needed another centre-back. We needed another central midfielder. And we didn't do it. We don't need a central midfielder if you're going to keep Alfie Devine and give him a chance. But for whatever reason, he still can't get a chance at the club. I said from the start, I said we would finish 5th, and I'm going to stick with that. But, there are a few things that, still need to be addressed and a few question marks. I know, Chris, you were going to say something. So
sorry, I was going to interrupt and just say, you've got the likes of Tonguion Ndombele, who have had offers, he's turned them down. Eric Dyer has had offers, he's turned them down. Davinson Sanchez, the club have asked for too much money for him. He's had offers, but the clubs have felt that he's too expensive. Pierre-Emile Højbjerg has turned down a move to Fulham. Tottenham have turned down an offer from Atletico Madrid for him to go out on loan. Hugo Lloris has turned down a move to Newcastle. He's now talking to Nice. It doesn't help, does it, that the football club are operating in the fact that some of these players have got to head out the door first before we bring in other players. There was talk today, certainly, about signing Conor Gallagher. Chelsea wouldn't entertain anything below £50 million. Trevor Chalobah, that was a deal that Spurs looked at in the last couple of hours about signing him on loan. That's now dead in the water, as per Fabrizio Romano a short while ago. Spurs also put in a bid of £20 million to Bournemouth for Lloyd Kelly. My point, Josh, is that should we be able to, get rid of some of these players before bringing in other players? Because you've got that Kane money. This is my worry. When Harry Kane went out the door, had we already spent the money, or was that money sitting there ready to go out and spend? I think that's pretty obvious now. Yeah,
I think it's disgraceful. It's shameless from the club. It's completely shameless, and that was the bit that I was going to get onto, was the fact that, yes, you pointed out all these players that may well still be at the club, but that doesn't count as squad depth, because they're all rubbish. They're all absolutely rubbish. And that's the reason why the club wanted to get rid. That's the reason why Ange didn't want anything to do with these players. And, just to add to it, Davinson Sanchez, as far as I understand, turned down the opportunity to go to Nottingham Forest, was not keen on PSV either, and was not keen on Monaco. So as well as the club turning down approaches, a lot of this is actually on the players. The club had approaches, and the players themselves turned it down. Højbjerg refused to go to Fulham. I understand from a club perspective why they wanted the obligation, because Højbjerg is going into the last year of his contract. There's certain things that I understand, but at what point does the club cut their losses and say, do you know what, this situation is untenable? Big clubs are ruthless, and Tottenham is the least ruthless club going. The only thing that Tottenham does that is ruthless is Daniel Levy sacking managers before cup finals, or sacking managers on a whim because the Tottenham fans have basically had the manager's head, booed the team, booed the manager, called them every insult under the sun for months, and then eventually he bends over, right? It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. You've got a player like Eric Dyer, who will probably never play for Tottenham again. His contract ends in a year. At this point, you think, at what point does the club start banishing players? What point do they make them train by themselves and say, look, you've had chances to go, you're refusing to go, you're not ever going to play for the first team again. We're not going to even let you play for the under-21s because that would be a hindrance to the development of those young players. A player like Eric Dyer, for example, he still, I'm sure, believes that he's capable of playing at the top level at a top club. I'm sure he still believes he's capable of getting into that England squad for the Euros. But tell him he's training alone, tell him he's not going to play a minute for the club, you will pay him his contract, and that is it. Okay, yes, he might get a nice payday out of it, but he won't be playing for England at the Euros. It won't look good for any club that wants to potentially go and sign him in the summer. He's going to find his options severely limited. Suddenly, the club actually has a bit of power over the player in that situation. And at that point, you can probably get the player to agree to mutually terminate the contract. And then he can go and actually sign for another club. And I'm sure if he is a free and Tottenham aren't haggling over 5 million here or there, he will find himself playing football somewhere. At what point do you do that? Arsenal have been talking about terminating Nicolas Pepe's contract. They spent £72 million on this guy, and they're going to terminate the contract. We did it with Doherty. Why can't we do it with Eric Dyer? Davinson Sanchez, I've got a little bit more sympathy for because, I feel bad that he missed the penalty. I don't think he's good enough. But at the same time, out of all of the players that have been mentioned, he's one of them that if we had to keep him in the squad, or if I had to pick one to keep, it would be him. I'd rather him than the likes of Ben Davis, in my opinion. But, Tanguy and Ndombele, clearly untenable. Eric Dyer, clearly untenable. Hugo Lloris, I think that's going to be done somewhat amicably, although I don't think it's been respectful from the club and from the supporters towards him, given how long he's been at the club. And I know it didn't end right. I think the way the whole thing's been handled has been poor, but at the very least, I hope that, I'm glad and encouraged to see that the club are going to allow him to talk to Nice. And I'm sure that will probably be a mutual termination at this point, because they're not going to get any money for him now. So I think that actually to let him go back to his boyhood club, that would be quite nice from the club. So that's one thing less to think about. But you've got players essentially sitting on their hands that are happy to just take the paycheck and don't care. And that's what is a real kind of red flag for me, because not only are these players refusing moves to other clubs, having an air of arrogance and snobbery about it, frankly, but the very fact that these players have clearly been told that they are not wanted at the club, they should be looking to move on, and they're happy to just take the paycheck. And I'm not including Hotspur in this list, because, again, Hotspur is another one that I think gets a lot of unfair criticism. I don't think he's necessarily good enough now to start in this midfield. However, I still think he could do a very good job in the squad. I think, to close a game out as he did against Man United, that's perfect. That's what I've been crying out for Hotspur to do for a little while now. But at the same time, you've got certain players like your Eric Dyers and your Tanguy and Ndombele who will happily take the paycheck. No wonder they were so poor on the pitch, because if this is the attitude that they're going to show when they're offered the chance to, resurrect their career, frankly, it doesn't bode well for the attitude that they show on the pitch, and their performance is certainly would raise those question marks. So, I think ultimately, to answer your question in short, originally about squad depth, I don't count half of those players as squad depth. I don't think they can be reintegrated. I think Hotspur can. I think Sanchez can. Other than that, I don't think the others can. And as I pointed out, in my first answer about AFCON and about the Asia Cup, there's no guarantees Bentancur ever recovers from his injury and is the same player that he had. An ACL, I mean, Richard, you'll probably be able to talk about it, with injuries in sport, when you're an athlete and you get certain types of injuries, the amount of hard work you've got to do to even be at peak physical level to compete in the first place, to do that after such a serious injury, it's a real question mark. And we've seen it with so many athletes, we've seen it with footballers as well. So we almost take for granted that he's going to be back to his best, and that's an option. He may not even be fit by January. He may not be ever at the level to play Premier League football again. We don't know that. So I'm very, very pleased with our starting 11, bar maybe Richarlison. I think we could do with a striker, proper striker. I like some of these signings. I like Solomon. I like Brennan Johnson. I really like Maddison, obviously, and Van der Ven, of course, and Udogie, who feels like a new signing as well. But at the same time, you know, I look at that beyond the starting 11, we're in the same situation we were in last year, where I don't feel that we've got that squad depth, and I don't feel that the quality is there. All it takes is a few injuries, and we could be struggling again.
Josh, just an update on the Bentancur situation. The embargoed press conference has just gone out, by the way, at 10:30 from Ange Postecoglou. I've got some quotes here. Bentancur came to me yesterday and said he wanted to train. 1 minute later, one of the medical staff collared him. November will be the time that we will look to integrate him. When he will be back, he will be like a new signing. The comments that I was going to read out is Ange Postecoglou spoke about a director of football and said it's unusual not to have a director of football. It's the club's plan to have one in the near future. Change is change. We needed to change personnel. This team finished 8th last year. That's where the club was. I haven't been blocked in any way making the changes I wanted to make. I love this part of the process. He then went on to say, whatever happens, I take the responsibility. I would never say a player isn't mine. He was talking about club signings here. I didn't sign this player. If a player came in, they are my player. I like working with a sporting director as they do the legwork, which I don't have time for. If a question ever comes up about a club signing, I will say they're mine. Matt, what is this squad? What can this squad achieve, in your opinion, this season? Can we get back into Europe?
Yes, I think we can. That has to be the target, and I think we can with the starting 11, as we said. That's a lot stronger now, for sure. I think it's just that worry if we get some key injuries to some of those the important players in the core of the team, that would be an issue. But I think realistically, the minimum they've got to be aiming for is top 6. Personally, we haven't obviously got European football. And obviously now out of the Carabao Cup, disappointingly this week. So FA Cup doesn't start till January, so there's not really any excuses in terms of too many games. I think the key is keeping everyone fit and taking it from there. I just think overall with this window, it's just on balance. I think the incomings have been very good. We've added quality. We can't get Van der Ven, as we said, Maddison. There's some good signings in there. It's just the fact that are we going to have enough in terms of goals? If Richarlison's not firing, he doesn't find form. We've got Son, because I think with Son and Richarlison, they need to be weighing in minimum with 15 goals apiece. So if they're out of form, that does give me concerns really in terms of where the goals are going to come from. I know Ange wants them across the team, but we'll just have to see. There's obviously a lot of new players in that front line. But I think for me, where there's been this concern with this window is the fact that what has been the transfer strategy here? We've left it late, and then today we're in this position, as we always are. Lots of players were trying to move on. Lots of loan deals were kicking the can down the road again. So we're going to have this issue further down the line, and you just feel like we've been relatively proactive with the incomings, but not proactive with the outgoings, and that's a real concern for me. And you've only seen it in the week. Tuesday with Fulham, we made 9 changes. And we look poor. It almost felt like the old kind of low block from last season. Didn't have that attacking football that we're looking for. But I think, like I say, with that starting 11, if we can keep that starting 11 fit, I think top 6 realistic, possibly more, possibly 5th. And then obviously, let's see. I mean, it's a long season, right? We've obviously got the January window. You would hope that they're lining up targets for January as well. And we'll see where we are come kind of Christmas time. You would like to think, I mean, we've been here before, but if we're in good shape come Christmas, they've really got to make sure they reinforce the team going forward from January, for the back end, business end of the season. So, yeah, I think for me, top 6 has to be the minimum, Chris.
The Daily Telegraph have just stated they believe that Hugo Lloris has just said no to the offer to Nice. Wow. Rich, let's come to you. Ange Postecoglou said, "I'm not getting involved in the process of appointing a director of football." He was then asked the question right at the end of the embargoed press conference, when does Scott Munn start his job? And he said, "Come on, that's not my brief." Are you surprised that Ange Postecoglou started the job? He clearly wants a director of football. He said in his press conference he wants to work with a director of football. Are you surprised that we didn't appoint one for him to work with from day one?
Yeah, of course. But I've said this before on your show, Chris, as well. The whole framework of the club has been it's been farcical, hasn't it? And whether that's the women's team all the way to the men's team, to board level, it's been quite farcical over the last couple of years. And no real direction, no real leadership in the right areas. And without those strong pillars of any club or organisation, you will really struggle at that top of that pyramid. And obviously, I work a lot across that within my sport as a professional athlete, and I work personally really hard at getting these pillars of success right at the start, and then building off that and having that trust, honesty, confidence, resilience, really building off that kind of real strong platform. And I think Spurs have never had that. It's been very chaotic. It's been, like some of the boys have said, with the transfer strategy, there's been no strategy. There's been kind of, the manager wants to go for a certain type of player, and that's fine. But as fans, we've seen some of the real problems and issues with the team moving forwards, and those have never been addressed. And Maddison's come in after probably 4 or 5 seasons that we've actually been looking for a player of his ilk that can slot in there, and you just see how that's changed the whole dynamic of the club, never mind the team, and how the team now and the fans have got confidence because they've got a pivot point in the team. And as a team, I think the manager is really important, but also having that quarterback in the team that really does provide those transitional movements between attack, defence, but also really spark the fans into kind of, this is why we're here. And we've not had that. So going back to your question, I think it's really important that as fans know that the club's got that direction, they've got those strong pillars in place, and really shows the directions to the fans. So when the fans come to support the team at the weekend, they can kind of get really behind the team and really support the momentum moving forwards, because a successful club in the Premier League, it's all about momentum, and that signings, that positive kind of reinforcement from the directors down. We don't get that. We don't get the confidence. And I think that's a frustration that we have as fans. We kind of sell one of our best ever players, and then we don't really get the information to say, it's okay, we've got a plan in place here. We're going to reinvest over an amount of time that's really going to elevate our performances, maybe in a different direction, maybe not in a stronger number 9, but in other areas. And we don't have that. I know, Chris, you've been really frustrated with the communication from board level down, but I think it's because of that, there's so much frustration in the crowd. And then that, as somebody that participates on a platform that encompass crowd, if the crowd get on your back, it makes a massive difference to your performance. And that's what we haven't got right over the last couple of seasons.
Rich, when you mentioned there momentum, of course, Ange Postecoglou made 9 changes in that game against Fulham. Now, what baffled me on that night, and I still don't understand it, we have tried to sell Pierre-Emile Højbjerg today. We have tried to sell Davinson Sanchez today. Now, we knew the other night against Fulham that we were going to try and sell those 2 players. Now, Ange Postecoglou come out and said that he wanted to give everybody an opportunity. Why would you be given an opportunity? You know, I love Ange, don't get me wrong, but when he come out and said that, you know, he was right in what he did, he didn't take any responsibility, in my opinion, and put his hand up and say, I got it wrong, where I think most fans, 99% of fans the other night said, you got it wrong with team selection. When you talk about momentum, it kind of stopped that momentum. And I think that some fans are like, oh, we're out of the cup in August.
Yeah, I know, and that is a massive kick in the ass, really. But that happened even in pre-season with some of the games that Harry was playing as well. Clearly, Harry was going, like we talked about, and then he played and scored 4 goals, and that was great for Harry. But he moves on, and then it's like, but the team's in a worse state because somebody hasn't taken on that position. That Harry had the opportunity, and somebody else could have dropped in there and had the confidence going into the season. Momentum is massive in sport. Momentum, having somebody that gives people confidence, not just the players but also the fans. I think the Fulham game, Ange didn't show Fulham enough respect. I think we should have been very close to our full strength starting 11. If he believes that full 11, only having one game a week, is able to manage the workload. But on the other side, he was trying to articulate to us fans to say that every player needs to have their chance within the first team. I'm not saying that's right, but that is what he was literally saying. He was saying, guys, you've had your chance. This might not come around for another couple of months now. You didn't kind of buy into the philosophy of the team moving forward. It clearly has had a negative effect on the team, and now you're obviously not going to play again or not start. And Højbjerg, like you say, I think Højbjerg is that impact player that comes on to kind of shore things up if he stays at the club.
Josh, let's come to you. Why do you think Spurs have had so much problem offloading players? Because, you take the likes of Ndombele, for instance, there's been offers. Some people say he'd rather sit there, take the money. Do you know what? As a football fan, I really don't like that, to think that footballers are just all about the money rather than actually playing on the pitch. Because surely, whilst growing up, wanting to be a professional footballer, the most important thing to you is game time.
You say that, Chris, but then look at Saudi Arabia. All these players going out to Saudi to just earn money. And a lot of players saying that they're just going out there to earn money. And I'm sure there's a lot of characters in football and in our club who are there just to pick up a wage. And it's the best outcome, isn't it? Not having to do your job and getting paid 200 grand a week. I mean, I'm sure anyone would bite your hand off if you didn't have to play football, or you didn't have to go to work, and you just were given 200k a week. It's fantastic. I can't get my head around it. I think we are a bit naive as a football club. Like I think it was Josh said, we just can't. We're not ruthless. We can't kick these players out. I don't know if that lies with Daniel Levy and the balance sheet, looking at how much terminating a contract may cost. These players we signed for so much money, and now they're worth absolutely nothing, which is an example of terrible recruitment, which is only just going to harm us in the long term, as we're seeing now. Ndombele, we spent so much money on. He's probably worth not much now, a couple of £1 million. People won't buy him. It's just an absolute waste of money, Chris.
He only wants to go to a club where he can play Champions League football.
It's absolute arrogance, that is. But then I can see in his head, he just won the league, didn't he, with Napoli? So I can see where it's coming from in his head. He's probably got that winner's medal around his neck, and he's probably just been a bit arrogant, isn't he? Oh, Chris, it really does my head in. Honestly, we need to rip up some of these contracts because it's an absolute joke. I can't believe we haven't got rid of Eric Dyer this summer, for one, because he's not going to play a game under Ange. Ange won't even put him in his squad, and we haven't got rid of him. We should have got rid of him, Chris.
You say that, Josh. An injury to Romero and Van der Ven. Who are you putting in?
Not Eric Dyer. Anyone but Eric Dyer. I can't watch that anymore. It's obvious what's going to happen. The thing with what we just talked about with Fulham, the fans have seen what these players do time and time again. The same players make the same mistakes, and they let us down as fans over and over and over again. Postecoglou probably isn't a fan of the club. He probably hasn't been watching these players for years and years and years, whereas we have as fans. So hopefully that did give him a reality check against Fulham and showed him what these players are all on about. Because Chris, some of these players we should have got out the door today. Like Hugo Lloris still turning down offers. He's been wanting to go since day one of the summer, if not before then, after what happened at Newcastle away. It's terrible management from the top, Chris. It's abysmal from the top, because we needed to have got players out the door, and now it's completely impinged on our transfer policy making, because we haven't been able to get a few players in because we've been told that we need players out the door to bring players in. It's just it is a bit of a mess, and I hate to moan, and I see the comments in chat saying, "Oh, lots of moaning," but the worst thing for me, I just want to finish on this, is that when you see players almost agreeing a deal with Tottenham and then turning us down for clubs like Brighton, that demonstrates to me that we are in decline as a football club and other clubs are rising, and we've got to try our hardest, and I hope Postecoglou can deliver, because we will be left in the mud if we can't compete with those like the up and coming clubs like Brighton. Even you may even argue Aston Villa, these clubs that are in Europe now and we aren't. We've had the luxury of Harry Kane in our squad, a world-class player. He's gone now. We finished 8th with him scoring 30 goals last season. We've lost those 30 goals. Are we going to finish higher than 8th this season without Harry Kane? It's a big worry. I hope Postecoglou can deliver, and I'm going to back him, and I'm going to back the team, and I'm excited for this season. And we've had a great start, and I hope we get a win at Burnley away. But it is a worry. It really is, Chris. And with all this kind of, we've got this murky feeling now with all these bad figures at the back of the room. All these players that we wanted out the door, they're still there in that team. And is that good for the dressing room? And like the lad said, when is it going to be that are we actually going to kick these players out of the squad and make them train on their own? Because when is it that they are going to start causing issues in the dressing room this season?
That's an interesting point, an interesting question. But the Turkish transfer window ends in a couple of weeks' time, so Tanguy Ndombele could go out there, but the chances of Champions League football is quite slim. Saudi Arabian League, another week. I know you're laughing, Rich. I'm just, living on a little bit of hope here. Football.London have just stated it looks like Tottenham's incoming signings are done with Brennan Johnson's arrival. Josh Hughes, let's come to you. Lloris, Højbjerg, Sanchez, Brian Hill, Perisic, Dyer, Lo Celso, Sessegnon, Ndombele, White. They were all the names that were listed. And, the likes of the Daily Mail, yourself, probably expected to head out the door in some capacity, either on loan or on a permanent basis. Are you surprised that a lot of these players are still here? And what does the future hold with someone like Eric Dyer?
Hopefully banished from the club's training ground and absolutely nowhere to be seen, frankly. I think I've just had enough. I had sympathy. But now I don't. I think when you're rejecting moves left, right, and centre, and you've made it, you're that delusional to think when you've been told you don't have a future at the club that you can still somehow turn it around. When the manager's made it clear, the club's made it clear. I think it's just really poor, because he knows he's in the last year of his contract and he's going to leave on a free in the summer. So, as far as I'm concerned, it's all it does is limit what we're capable of doing in the transfer market, limit how we're able to improve as a team. And if he was that committed to the club, right, he would realise, actually, the club's made it clear I'm not wanted, and I want to play at the Euros, because he seems to be delusional enough to think that he can resurrect his career at Tottenham. So he's probably delusional enough to think he can resurrect his England career. I know this is strong, and I'm not holding back from this, but this is it. I'm not going to beat around the bush with this. The guy, I don't know what planet he's living on if he thinks that. I know he's been a servant to the club for years. I know he has, but listen, if I was told by my employer I wasn't wanted, and I was told by my line manager I wasn't wanted, that's the equivalent of your manager and your chairman, I'd be looking at the first exit that I could possibly have.
It shows a lack of ambition, doesn't it, Josh? I think that's the whole. If you as a team you're looking to move forwards and you've got a different style of play, you don't fit that model, and you're saying you're just going to sit on the sidelines and just take your paycheck, then it definitely shows a lack of ambition. And that's obviously what the new manager's looking at and going, I don't want to have this negative energy around the dressing room. And I'm sure they won't. From what he was saying over the last couple of days, I'm sure what will happen is, well, you guys have kind of made your bed. Now you need to sleep in it. What's going to happen is you're going to train with the reserve team coach and you're going to train after the first team, and you're not going to be anywhere near the R25, just to let you know that, because R25 are these people, and that's it. So you've got no playing time this year at all. And then they just ride their contracts out to at least January. Which
is damaging to his career, damaging to anyone's career in that situation. Yeah. And this is the thing. And I think that this is, it almost exactly sums up why fans want these types of players out of the football club. Yeah. Because these are the players that were not performing. They were making the most mistakes. They were the ones that were letting us down time and time again. And then when push comes to shove and there's a change in direction, they're the ones happy to sit on their hands and take the money. It shows that they're not cut out for that level.
Yeah, it's an easy number, isn't it, for them just to come in? Because I think that's the frustrating thing in Don Bele, other players such as that, Josh. You know, they're happy to sit there, take the money. It comes back to the transfer strategy and poor contract management as well, I think. And I suppose the other angle to this is, yes, I mean, what's going on? We've got players refusing to move, but they know they're not going to get game time. But I think there's also an issue from board level where they're overvaluing a lot of these fringe players. That's obviously being a key stumbling block as well. We're overvaluing what we think these players are worth, and we're touching it at the top of the show. You know, we should be more ruthless. I mean, I hate to cite them, but that lot down the road, you look at what they've done there. They've been ruthless. You know, they were ruthless with moving out certain senior players out of their squad, and now obviously they've moved on. They've progressed the last couple of seasons, and I think that's the concern for me, is that we're not proactive, and there's an awful lot of loan deals again in terms of outgoings. So again, that's another issue we're going to have to deal with further down the road. You know.
Do you think, Matt, that some of these players think they're better than they actually are, with Hotspur turning down and move to Fulham, wanting Champions League football, thinking that he can go to one of the best teams in the world?
Absolutely. You know, they've had the opportunity with us to try and get back into Champions League, etc. But yeah, I think there's a reality check for some of them. You know, listen, I haven't got a problem if they're going to kind of work hard, knuckle down, have the right attitude. I mean, Hojbjerg certainly, you can't question the guy's attitude in his instance. But there are other players that are still with the club that you could certainly question their attitude and work ethic. And yeah, you know, if that's going to continue, we don't want them around the club. It's a bad influence on the team. Andrew's obviously trying to build new ethos, you know, a positive team going forward, attacking front foot football, and we want players that are, you know, committed to the cause and want to work hard. And if you're not on that boat, then you need to go. But he needs to be supported by the board, and if that means being ruthless, if it means terminating contracts, you know, where possible, you have to look at it. See, we're now in a position we've got an awful lot of these players still with us or out on loan, and they will come back to us at the end of the season. And it's, again, we've got to look at it. And it's just frustrating to get to that point in the window where now we've left it too late for a number of these players. And they're dictating that they won't go there, they won't go here, we'll stay here, thank you. And that how can that be right?
Rich, there's a lot of people in the comments saying we're all negative. This is a seriously negative chat. We all knew when Ange Postecoglou came in that this was going to be a major job for him. I think he knows what a major job it is, a major rebuild. Is it the fact that all of us have been a little bit ungrateful and we just wanted to accelerate the process, and we all, as fans, want it to move faster than it's actually realistic?
Listen, I think every fan deserves to have their opinion, but I think we're being realistic with, obviously, what's happened with the club, and then seeing what other clubs have actually done within this time period.
Sorry, Rich. We're delighted to announce the sign of Brennan Johnson. Let's go, Brennan. That is dead on 11 o'clock. There we go.
We had this should get Josh on there. So we had that news about 20 minutes ago, right?
You know what the thing is, though, I've got to say, right? This is typical Daniel Levy. Typical Daniel Levy. Let's get this done. Announce the player bang on 11 o'clock. So when everyone is feeling absolutely pissed off with how pathetic this end to the window has been, we'll announce the signing, and a big money signing, to try and distract. This is, you could change the name of Tottenham Hotspur Football Club to Distraction FC, because that is what this is. This is just a distraction. This is to get the fans that are feeling angry about the ticket prices, angry about the lack of signings, angry about selling one of our greatest ever players, the fans that have had enough of years of neglect to, put up with it for another 18 months until the same thing happens again. We are being taken for fools. We are being 100% taken for fools. It's a great signing. I wish him all the best. And I really hope the fans get behind him. And it's a shame that these things, coincide often, because I don't think Brennan Johnson deserves that. I think Brennan Johnson is a terrific young player who could be a very, very good player for us, in years to come. But the fact that this has been done this way is 100% calculated. And I can say that I've been in enough newsrooms and I've dealt with enough news stories in my lifetime, so far, and in my short career so far, to know that there are things like this that are calculated by PR.
It's planned in, obviously, isn't it? It's a smoke screen that the clubs obviously put out there, and it then overshadows some of the real problems and issues that we have.
Every time.
Yeah, my real concern is like the boys have said, really, Chris, is that like last year, we could kind of see that we were dropping down the table, even though we were in fourth. When we got rid of Conte, you could see that results were going to show whether Conte was there, we were going to drop down to the position we were. That was evident because of how we were playing. The team wasn't a team anymore. We can see as fans that potentially the squad is not big enough for the challenges that we're having this season, and that's with players going away, injuries, etc., and players being out of form. The players that aren't in that starting 11 aren't good enough for us to rely on those. Clearly, we saw that the other night, and that's my big problem at the moment, is that, like Josh was saying, that the signing of Johnson is a big smokescreen that we haven't really addressed. That number 9, a centre back, maybe another midfielder, that really does kind of set us in good stead moving into this new season.
Can I just say there are a couple of questions stating, can Brennan Johnson play tomorrow at Burnley? No, there was a 12 noon deadline by the Premier League, so he won't be involved in the Burnley game. Rich, can I just come back to you? Brennan Johnson, where does he fit in the team, and whose place does he take?
Wow, and that just depends on.
Because when you're spending that sort of money, he should be a starter, right?
You'd want him to be, wouldn't you? You'd want him to be. And where does he? Is he direct competition with Charlison and wanting to play up top as that floating player, or is he going to play out wide and be a player that we can kind of move in and out with Kulusevski? I think for me, what he does add is real pace, so a different dynamic within the team. He still needs to work on his finishing. I think he's a really good, willing worker of the ball. He's 110% whenever he's on the pitch. I think he definitely gives the manager more options off the bench if he wants to initially use him like that. Because remember, in the league, we are a team that is on a winning run. And do you want to change that initially? Probably not. Again, looking at momentum, looking at obviously how the team's been working. Again, you look at some of the problems that we've had over the first 3 games. It was still defensively. It was still like some of the chances that the opposition had really were kind of misses that could have drastically changed the outcome of those games. I do think that we did show that we were very wasteful up top, but that's, again, confidence. Defensively is where kind of my head was kind of going, why are we not adding to the reinforcements at the back? Yes, Johnson coming in and different dynamic, maybe offer that support up top. But I still think we've had we had a massive opportunity to make another acquisition at the back to really support what Ange's trying to do, and is trying to make us bulletproof at the back, obviously.
Josh, let's come to you. How do you think Ange Postecoglou is feeling about this transfer window? Do you think he's happy?
I think he's got some players in that he's probably very happy with. I think any manager in the Premier League would be happy with James Maddison, including Pep Guardiola. So yeah, I don't think you'd be unhappy with the players that have come in. I think the main point that he'd be unhappy with would be the lack of outgoings, as we've all just said a lot. We just haven't shipped out the players that are troublemakers and will make the same mistakes over and over again, which will probably come back to bite us in the arse, because there will be a time when someone's injured and one of them is going to have to slip in and is going to make a mistake that we've seen over and over and over again. And it's going to annoy all the fans, and it's probably going to wind up Postecoglou as well. So I don't necessarily think he'd be unhappy at the club because of this transfer window. I think we've given him a good foundation, as I said earlier. This is just one transfer window. We're not going to sort out all of our problems in one transfer window. That's not going to happen. Although that's the perfect, the kind of the fake Instagram reality that some people might want. It's not how it works in the real world. It's going to take time. This project is going to take time. It's going to take patience, and it's going to take multiple windows to sort out this squad. And it's evidently going to take multiple windows to ship out all of these players that we want gone. And obviously, we've got January transfer window. That's another opportunity. I want Daniel Levy on the phone on January the 1st to get these players out and sort out our squad and give Ange a clean slate to do exactly what he wants. Because there are going to be, I think, I do worry, Chris. I think there's going to be problems because, like you said, if we lose Romero, that's when it's like Jenga, isn't it? The tower is going to come crumbling down, and Ange is just going to have a nightmare if that happens. And us fans, it's going to get toxic. We're not going to be happy. At the moment, on the surface level, with the team that we have, I'm very happy, and I'm sure Ange is too. I'm excited. All this negativity, but I feel excited to watch or try and watch us against Burnley. I don't think we're on the television this weekend, but for a long time, I was not excited to watch Tottenham, and a lot of fans weren't either. And now under Ange, I am excited because we play attacking football. We've got some decent players in there, and it's much more exciting than what we had to watch under Conte. Defensive football, sideways passing, basically 11 Harry Winkses on the pitch. Very, very painful. But now it's exciting. Let's try and be positive because I think we are going in the right direction. And I think we are doing the right thing, backing Postecoglou. And hopefully it can bring us to a better position than 8th. But Chris, what do you think? Do you think he's been handed the correct players? Do you think he'll be happy? Do you think he'll be unhappy? If you were Postecoglou, what would you be thinking right now?
I'd be disappointed that we haven't offloaded a number of players. He's going to name his 25-man squad very, very soon. I think that's going to be very hard for him. And I think that the club should have given him more tools to go forward, especially with no European football. I was very disappointed. I am still very disappointed about getting out of the Carabao Cup, I must say. I think it was an excellent opportunity for us to go far in that competition and perhaps put a trophy in the cabinet after, so long of waiting. I do like the style of football under Postecoglou. I do feel positivity, but I just don't think that we have done enough again in this transfer window. We finished 8th last season in the Premier League, and I think we're going to struggle for a decent European place. I know everyone wants me to be positive, and I know the amount of people that come up to me in the stadium and say that they love watching this channel and they love listening to the podcast. And I think people sometimes think that I'm going to give like really, really positive answers, but I don't feel positive like we're going to finish in a Champions League spot. I think that Postecoglou is trying to build something special. I think that he has got a young, dynamic team. But the starting 11, a couple of injuries, you suddenly get an injury to, Heung-min Son, Maddison, Van der Ven, Romero at the back. We could be in trouble. We could be in big trouble because we've got to then call on players that have let us down in previous years, many, many times. And that's why I say I just don't get the whole team selection against Fulham in the Carabao Cup the other night, particularly when we're trying to offload some of those players. It just doesn't make sense to me. So I think that we should have done more. We could have done more. I don't like leaving things to the last minute. Hate that. I just think that, Josh Hughes and I spoke, Josh, what was it, a month ago or so, and we were all very positive saying Ange Postecoglou needs this. Hopefully we've got our shopping list out and hopefully we're going to tick every single player off the list. I'm absolutely baffled that we've not brought in another centre-back, to give Ange Postecoglou the tools going forward. To answer your question, Josh, I think we should have done a whole lot more. And I think that when you look at the teams around us, particularly those that finished above us, 1 to 7 last season, I think that they have all strengthened. They have all gone out. They have all spent money. Have we done enough to get into Europe for next season? Because I tell you what, I feel gutted, being out the Carabao Cup. I know some people might laugh saying, well, it's only the League Cup. Don't worry about it. These cup competitions mean a lot to me. And I'm someone that travels all around the world and all around Europe to watch Spurs play, even if it is in the Europa Conference League. And it means a lot to me to be in Europe. And Spurs not being in Europe this season, I hate it. Absolutely hate it. And, the thought of another year, another season without European football, I won't like that whatsoever. Josh Hughes, let's come to you. I want to try and end this show on a positive. What have you made of Ange Postecoglou since being appointed? And of course, we've played 3 games in the Premier League. We're unbeaten. We have played attacking, exciting, on the front foot football as well. And we play Burnley tomorrow. Are you confident for a win at Burnley?
I am. Yeah, I'm confident to beat Burnley tomorrow. I'm confident with the starting 11. I really like a lot of these players. Look, we've had some really exciting signings with a lot of potential, but as we know about the glaring misses. We know that it's too little, too late. A failure to ship out the deadwood. Kane going, all the things that we've discussed. But in terms of the football, the brand of football, we're being entertained. We can't say we're not. Of course, we're being entertained. It's been completely game changing. However, it's still early days, and I think that another win, certainly going into the Arsenal game with 4 wins and a draw, obviously against Brentford, is nothing. Anything less than that is unacceptable, I think, now at this point, especially after getting dumped out the cup. And they're very winnable games. I said to you, Chris, about a month ago when we were talking about that shopping list, and I said that I think we'd finish 5th this season. I said, what I want to see from Tottenham is I want to be entertained and I want to see us beat all the teams that are below us and in and around us, home and away. And then let the rest of our season be defined on the home and away games against the top European clubs. And I will put Newcastle, and Brighton in that list as well now because they are in Europe, and Aston Villa. But all the other teams we've got to be beating home and away as a minimum. I do have a question mark, however, over Ange's man management skills. That's the one thing that I am questioning. And I think that's reasonable, actually, at this point, because he's still fairly new to the job. He's only had a few weeks. We had a bit of a disastrous pre-season. I think the organisation of that is the worst I can remember since supporting the club. I think the way he talks to the media, it's a breath of fresh air. I was showing my work colleagues the quotes that he made about the Robbie Williams song, which I thought was just absolutely brilliant. Like his sarcasm is, you know, even when he was getting mic'd up on TNT Sports, and he said, you know, he made the comment about introducing yourself first. All of that is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
But then when push comes to shove, I want to know if he's a good man manager behind the scenes, because we're entering a difficult phase for the club now, because we're going to have, as we've all just discussed, deadwood that he has said previously he will try and reintegrate into the squad. And he's going to have unhappy players. Emerson Royale, for example, who played very well, I thought, against Brentford, was dropped for the next 2 games and will probably be second choice now. Maybe that's to do with the price tag of Pedro Porro. I don't know. But you're going to, you know, there's going to be players that are unhappy with the mixed messages. Ivan Perisic was a player that was destined to go. Then it looked like he was going to stay. Then it looked like he was going to go it again. Now it looks like he's now obviously staying. So I think there's a number of players. Højbjerg's the same. It looked like Ange didn't want him, but now you would expect him to be reintegrated. So this is the real test now. And this is the real question mark, because I don't doubt what these players are capable of doing on the pitch. Certainly the starting 11. I think we're in for a real treat this season. But, you know, and the fact that we're only, this is the 4th game of the season that we're going into in the league. It's scary how good this team can become, bar injuries and everything else. But now the question is, how is Ange going to deal with these players? Is his man management as good as he is in front of the media, and as good as his tactical approach is? We've already seen one blip in terms of that team selection against Fulham. Let's hope there are no more. Let's hope he learns his lesson. And, you know, that's something we can forget about now. And it's as if that never happened. We kick on from Bournemouth and Manchester United, which were 2 very, very good performances with a lot of character. And you know what? I expect us to win tomorrow. And now that the window's open, shut, sorry, we can all kind of take a breath, try and forget about it and focus on the football, which is the most important thing now. And we can all wake up tomorrow morning, yes, probably a little bit annoyed, but at least I know certainly I will, because I'm on a flight at 7 a.m. tomorrow to Amsterdam. I'm going to be watching the game with the Amsterdam Spurs group, so it's going to be exciting meeting them. I'm going to watch the game in Amsterdam, and I'm going to be buzzing for it. I'm not going to care about going to Amsterdam. I'm not going to care about the airport. All I'm going to want to do is, when am I getting to that pub? When am I going to watch Spurs? That's all I'm thinking about when I wake up tomorrow. So, you know, football, can't fault it. Let's see what his man management's like.
Josh, you're getting absolutely hammered by a lot of these comments. Questioning our manager and his man management. What score prediction are you going with?
I'm going to go with 2-0 again. It's one of them. I feel like I can't see us scoring more than 2 goals. 2-0 the last 2 games. Yeah, why not 2-0 again? I think 2-0 would be a great result at Burnley as well, because, you know, we've been there before. Remember Middlesbrough in the Cup? We then went to Burnley, lost 1-0. We've had a few 1-0 defeats. I'm glad we're playing Burnley now and not later on in the season after the winter period. So, you know what? I think a win, even if it was a 1-0 win, a win at Burnley is a good result. So I just feel now this is not the same, you know, this is not the same Burnley that we're used to. This is a Burnley that is a lot more open, a lot more expansive, a lot more high risk and reward under Kompany, who I think is a very interesting young manager and someone that's going to go on to be really, really, really top quality. But I think we're too good for them. I think that we'll be too much for them on the day. I'm going 2-0.
Matt, let's come to you. Let's talk a little bit about Ange Postecoglou, your thoughts on him and the Burnley game. Of course, they're sitting in the bottom 3 at the moment. They've played 2, they've lost 2. How do you think Postecoglou was set up in this game as well? The same team against Bournemouth last weekend?
Yeah, I'd hope so. And given Tuesday. But yeah, I suppose in terms of Ange, for me, I think it's been a breath of fresh air. You know, he's been candid, very frank in his pressers. And I think he comes across well. Certainly, I think in terms of man management, I know Josh touched on it, I think he will be a good man manager. He strikes me as that personal sort of guy, really. And seeing some of when obviously he was announced, obviously doing a bit of research on him and seeing his kind of leadership style and how he was managing Australia, etc. You know, it gives me confidence in that. And you've seen what he's done at Celtic, so I think he's obviously going to have a bit of a challenge on his hand now with the window passing and having to reintegrate some of these players that you know, the fringe players. But yeah, I think he's been a breath of fresh air, and I think he'll be happy with kind of what he's got in terms of incomings for now. We go again in January in terms of additional strengthening, really. But I think what we need to see is some character and make sure we go and get a positive result against Burnley tomorrow. I think we will come away with a win. I would go for 2-1. I just think the way we play, I think we will concede goals from time to time. We're a lot more attacking now, but I think, you know, we should have goals in us. So I'd go for 2-1. And I fancy Son to get on the score sheet. He's overdue. He needs to hit some form now. So, yeah, I think that's where we are. And I think it's important we follow that up. I think we've got Sheffield United after that. I think it's important we go into that Arsenal game with those kind of 6 points from the next two and make sure we go to the Emirates, turn up and come away with something from there. That's a key game.
Oh, you're talking about the North London derby already.
Matt, already, absolutely.
Matt, Josh thinks we're going to finish 5th at the end of the season. If I ask you for a prediction, what are you going to go for?
As things stand, I think 6th.
Okay.
I think top 6. That has to be the minimum. Personally, I think top 6. I'd love to win the FA Cup. I think that, again, we all know 91 is far too long now, and we need to really take that seriously, especially being at the League Cup as well now. But I think top 6 is realistic. Everyone's got a different opinion on that, but I think top 6 has to be the target. And then if we're in good shape come kind of Christmas, as I said, then it depends what we do in the transfer window come January, and it depends how our rivals are, because I think what we mustn't forget is some of the teams that finished above us last season, Brighton and Villa, they've got to contend with Europe now. So they're going to have the fixtures. It's something they're not used to. They're going to have the Thursday, Sunday cycle as well to manage. We haven't got that. So, yeah, I think top 6 has to be the target as a minimum, and go for that FA Cup.
What about you, Rich?
Not 3rd or 4th. I think somebody needs to get to bed, I reckon. 3rd or 4th, Jesus. Somebody's had too many beers at the pub and then logged in. I think you need to look at the teams above us, what they're doing, and then reiterate what Matt was saying about some of the newer teams that have obviously got European football Wednesday, Sunday, or Thursday, Sunday, or whatever. I think we are going to be a lot tighter defensively this year. I think, yes, I understand that, like I said earlier, the first 3 games in the league, we looked like we were still very vulnerable at the back. But that's definitely going to be a focus on the technical side of, obviously, he's got the players now, and he's going to have to work with the players. So, probably going back to what Josh said about man management, I think obviously it's a step up in the Premier League, and you've got different characters, and he's going to be governed by those real decisions he's going to have to make, whether that's banishing players, reintegrating players, whatever. I think he's going to be judged on those kind of decisions, and how the continuity of the squad is really reflecting the results. How can you keep a squad of players of 25 happy, and obviously keep those other players away from the squad that are bringing those negative aspects of the reason why they're not playing and not wanted for the club. When I look at the dynamics of the club at the moment, and take Harry Kane's goals out of it, I think in certain positions we're better than last season. We haven't got 2 first-team players for every position. So injury-wise, we're very vulnerable. That's one of our vulnerabilities. Because we've not got a fixture-heavy season, I think that also might reflect how we do in that middle phase of the season. So between like December, February time, I think that's probably a really key time for us. And we need to be very consistent with our results. We can't be playing really crap 1 week and then beating Arsenal, Chelsea, or Liverpool the week after. We need to be very consistent. I would say 5th. I would be optimistic and say 5th with our finishing position. With some of the usual suspects above us. I think we still see at the start of the season some teams like flattered to deceive with some of the results, and maybe because they're playing some of the weaker teams. Obviously, the likes of like West Ham, who I think some people have said they've had a great start. For me, they played Luton today, who are poor, very poor, and they only just beat them 2-1. So, what's that?
They're top of the league.
Yeah, but they play poor teams though. They play poor teams, and for me, that the results will, when they start playing the better teams, they might not win another game all season, Chris. So, and obviously, I think they've invested in certain areas, which maybe some of the players that they've actually got might have been great for us, but that's by the by. Really, we've got what we've got now. We're going to have a good season. We all need to be very positive. Wear more pink. Don't wear blue. Have a smile on your face. Have a couple of ciders. You'll be all fine.
There you go, Rich. What a way to end here from Mark. Come on, boys. Be positive. 20 goals from Richarlison.
Not happening. Put a 5 on that. Go and put a 5 on that now. That's it.
Tottenham Hotspur Football Club have just announced that Brennan Johnson signed a deal with the club that will run until 2029, and he will wear the number 22 shirt.
Well,
Josh,
he signed, is he? Has he signed? I didn't realise.
He signed. He signed, Rich. He signed. And the transfer window is finally closed. I'll tell you, I'm glad about that. I can have some sleep. Josh, let's finish the show with you. Your score prediction for the Burnley game, and do you think Ange Postecoglou will name an unchanged side to the team that beat Bournemouth?
Yeah, I think he'll go with the exact same side. I just had one question, actually. Do you think Van der Ven will be starting? Because he picked up a knock, didn't he, against Fulham? Any news on that?
There's no... The only injury news from Postecoglou today is Lo Celso will be out. Everyone else is fine.
That's typical, isn't it? He plays 45 minutes and then he gets injured. Oh, dearie me, that is a shocker, that one. I think it'll go unchanged. I think I was impressed with the last game, and I think they've been playing very well. All the games this season so far I've been pretty impressed with. Nice attacking football. Sarr, fantastic. Bissouma, fantastic in midfield. Looks like we're much more dominant on the front foot. Just the football that you as a fan want to watch. So I'm going to go with a 2-1 win, and I think, but with a big B, but I think Burnley will score first. I think they're going to kind of shake us up a bit, but we'll pull it back. 2 goals from Richarlison's going to get one, I think, after getting his confidence back, and Udogie as well. He likes to push forward. That's my prediction.
It'd be a decent start to the season, Josh, wouldn't it? If we won at Burnley, to go into the international break, having played 4 league games, winning 3 and drawing 1, that'd be pretty decent.
Yeah, it's not bad. It's not bad. We haven't played too many big teams, quite a few small teams, including United. So we'll obviously be competing with West Ham up at the top of the league. Look, we've got to give it time. There's no point even looking at the table, but to rack up a few wins is nice to see. And being consistent is all that's really important. And I know we've got an absolutely horrific run in. If you look at the fixtures, there's some absolute shocking periods where we've got to play like Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, and then another like load of top 6 clubs all in a row towards the end of the season. So getting as many wins as possible, get the points on the table, get them racked up, and I'm a happy lad. I'm a happy Spurs fan if we can get 3 points tomorrow.
I'll tell you what, Josh, I'm with Matt on this one about Arsenal away, Chelsea away. Those are the games that I normally love and dread at the same time, as we all do. These London derbies, particularly those 2 grounds, Emirates and Stamford Bridge. They're horrible places to go as fans. We've never really been successful there over the years, and I would love to just go there, play entertaining football, and pick up 3 points at both those grounds this season. It would be absolutely wonderful. Josh Hughes, thanks so much for joining us this evening. It's been a pleasure having you back. Can't wait to have you back on again. Enjoy Amsterdam tomorrow. It'll be a good one, I'm sure. Where can people find you, and what are you up to in the near future?
Getting some rest for the first time this summer. You can find me at Josh Hughes TV. I promise you, I'm probably a bit emotional tonight, a bit tired. I've had probably 3-4 hours sleep the last 2 days. It's been absolutely crazy. So excuse my negativity. I'm not always this negative. I am sometimes a bit negative, but I think that's just being a football fan. I am actually excited about the season and about our chances. But yeah, Josh Hughes TV, commenting about Spurs all the time. And thanks once again, Chris, for having me on. It's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Josh. And Matt, pleasure having you back. Where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks for having me back on, Chris. Twitter handles on there at MJ_THFC. You can find me on Twitter. And yeah, good to be back on.
Thank you so much, Matt. And Richard, pleasure having you back. What are you up to at the moment? Where can people find you?
Well, I'm probably stuck in this car park that's on the way to the City ground still with all these signings. I'm training for Great North Run. So if you're in Newcastle next weekend, I'll be running the streets of Newcastle. And I think I'm planning to be at maybe the next 2 home games, I think, with obviously one of my sponsors, Nike. So I'll be watching the Spurs, trying to get down there as much as possible this season. And yeah, that's all. Remember as well, we need to follow and like Chris as well, and really support his work, because it's without Chris, it's awesome. And Josh, stay away from those naughty bars in Amsterdam, mate.
You had to go there, didn't you? You had to go there. Well, pleasure having you back on, Rich. Thanks so much. And Josh, where can people find you?
Yeah, Josh Cowlin on Instagram if you fancy following me. Thank you very much for having me on again, Chris. Always nice to have a chat, and yeah, it's been a pleasure.
Well, I would just like to say a big thank you to all of the listeners and all of the viewers of this channel throughout August and the transfer window. We've had a record. It is just under 3.5 million views throughout August, which is absolutely unbelievable. I have been putting videos out pretty much every hour, so that's why the views are so high, I'm sure. But I'm so glad the transfer window has now ended. As I said earlier, I had hoped that Spurs would have done a lot more to back Postecoglou for us to get a European spot. But, you know, fingers crossed. Let's hope it's a good season. Let's hope it's a good, entertaining season, and we finish in a European spot. Anyway, I will be back tomorrow for another edition of the Spurs Chat podcast after the Burnley game, where hopefully we will be talking about Spurs picking up another 3 points in the Premier League. Josh, Matt, Josh and Richard, thanks so much for your time this evening. If you don't subscribe to the channel as yet, please do hit that subscribe button, and I will see you again very soon. Until the next time, come on you Spurs.
Come on you.